if you know this, but on average, it takes 10 years from the first time a person experiences a mental health symptom to when they seek help. And a lot happens in that 10 years. And so going back to the preventive nature of what I think is my calling, it's to connect with people. I don't think we're going to immediately solve the need of supply of mental health providers, but I think a lot can go really far in just being connected with people.
You're listening to America's Healthiest City on Mike King Biz Radio Network on ESPN Richmond 106.1 and Choice 105.3. Welcome to America's Healthiest City on ESPN Richmond 106.1, part of the Mike King Biz Media Network. If you are new to this show, please visit americashealthiestcity.com to learn about our 10-year community partnership to make Richmond the healthiest region in America by 2033. It does take all of us. You can learn about our ideas board, leave your ideas, leave comments on others' ideas. And if you represent a business, a nonprofit, an academic institution, or a government entity, and you want to move the needle toward positive community health, please look at what it takes to become an ambassador. It's free, and we will help you tell your story about how you're making an impact here in Richmond. So today we have Ellie Martinez, the Executive Director of Big Brothers Big Sisters, a super impactful organization here in the region and beyond. Super excited to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, well, my pleasure. You guys are doing important work. You've done important work for a really long time, so we're excited to highlight you and talk about mentorship today. We've not the first time we've talked about it on the program, but the first time we've focused on it. The young people are our future, so I always start this show out with everybody by trying to delve into why Richmond. What brought you to Richmond? Are you a native? Did you transplant here?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a story I really like to tell. So I was actually born in Brazil. I was raised there until I was about 11 years old. My family moved to Orlando, Florida. So all things in the heart of Disney and all things Orlando. I think the weather was pretty close to Brazil, so I felt right. And then I went to school in Florida, and in 2016, I was dating somebody who's now my wife, but we took a trip. We said, we knew we wanted to move out of Florida. We looked at a map and said not too far north because it's too cold, not too far south because it's too much like Florida, landed in Virginia. And so we took a trip. It was October of that year, and so it was beautiful. It was all things we were looking for, and then we moved here 6 months later. So I've been here for almost 8 years now.
Great. Yeah. Well, I think it's a story that so many share. You have me beat by a year. I moved here in 2017. I was familiar with the area, so a little different, but a long time now. But welcome to Richmond.
Thanks. I still take it. I appreciate it. Same to you.
Thank you. Yeah. No, I feel like I am a Richmonder now, but it just kind of consumes you a little bit.
It does. It's a really welcoming, inclusive place, so it's easy to feel that way.
So you've spent time in Florida. You've been here in Richmond for about 8 years now. Have you always been in the space of social services, or I guess nonprofit space?
Not always in nonprofit, but always in youth development. So my first career venture was into education, early childhood. I really believe in the power of preventive work and working with kids and young people through their really formative years. And so I knew I wanted to teach for a while, and I did that for about 3 years. And then I switched gears. I still wanted to work with young people, this in a little bit of a different format, more kind of in family space, community space. And there just so happened to be a spot open. And this was actually in Florida, in Orlando. And so I started my time with Big Brothers Big Sisters, doing direct service delivery in Orlando. And then when we moved, there just so happened there was a spot here. I don't think those things happen by coincidence. I think I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And so it's really the preventive piece of the work that I think is my calling. I think there's so much happening in a formative way for young people as their brain are developing, as they're really figuring out who they are and the role they play, that I think it's important that we pay attention to that. So I love it here.
So not only have you been working with young people for a while, but I understand that you are a new parent as well.
I am. I didn't think that was going to come in here. I am. Yeah, she just turned 6 months last week. So it's really fun. We're going to do our first trick-or-treating tonight. We are a family of pirates. super fun. It's been great. Yeah, she's a joy.
Well, we'll talk a little bit more about mentorship and Big Brothers Big Sisters in a little bit, and I'm curious to know how things will change for you, or how you see things changing for you when we get to that. But
Mm-hmm.
tell us a little bit about what it's been like since you've been here in Richmond. Kind of acclimating to the community, understanding. I know you've transitioned roles. You weren't always the executive
Mm-hmm.
director, so that's a new thing for you. So tell us a little bit about what that's been like.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, I had a really eye-opening experience when I first moved to Richmond that I think has stayed with me, and I think still talks about my experience here. One of the very first interactions I had, we were buying things for our apartment after we moved. We were at a home goods store, and the young gentleman that was the cashier was looking at me very intently while he was checking out our purchases, and he said, "What are you?" And for a second, it just really caught me off guard. I don't think I knew how to answer that question. I had been surrounded my entire life by people who looked like me, who talked like me, who ate the same foods I did, listened to the same music I did. And it was very clear that that's not where I was anymore. And so I became much more aware of my identity and how I show up in places, and other people's identities and what they choose to share or not share. I became painfully aware of that. Um, and so I kind of walk with that in every interaction I go, thinking about kind of where have people been, what educates their conversations now. And so I'm always really mindful of that. And I think it's been an interesting perspective because the work we do is introducing two people who have never met, who likely come from completely opposite um, experiences and life experiences in general. And so thinking about what people are bringing into their match relationship, into their mentorship experience, is I find so fascinating. We get to know people on a really deep personal level before we make an introduction to a family or to a mentor or a little. And I just love learning about people. So it's been really fun to see that. And then watching people grow and transform through their mentorship experience, not only the little, that's a pretty clear target of what we're trying to do, right? But our bigs as well. And we see our families tell us that they've learned a lot or grown a lot through this experience too. So it's all about people, really, for me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I have a personal relationship to Big Brothers Big Sisters, albeit not typical. So I was matched briefly to a little, and then my little moved away, and then I moved away. But for a number of years, I volunteered on the Dancing with the Williamsburg Stars committee down in Williamsburg, and danced in 2012. So
Yeah.
super connected to what you guys are doing, and I want to take a chance to get into that. Before we do, I just want to remind you guys that you are listening to America's Healthiest City on ESPN Richmond 106.1, part of that Mike King Biz Media Network. We're trying to make Richmond, the entire region, not just the city, the healthiest region in America by 2033. And the way we do that is by bringing folks together to this show and to our website, americashealthiestcity.com. Today we're speaking with Ellie Martinez, the executive director of Big Brothers Big Sisters. This show is sponsored by Exponent 21. It's not free to put the show on the air, so we'll plug that really quickly. But let's talk a little bit about the programs that you guys have available. I know that my wife has was a big when she was in college. And so, there's a lot of different ways that folks can get involved. So I'll give you an opportunity to share about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are two core programs that we offer in most of our service territories. So thinking about kind of being Richmond all the way out to Virginia Beach, there's two core programs you'll find almost anywhere. One is our site-based programs. That's where we partner with schools. They're all elementary schools, and our bigs go into the school setting to mentor their little once a week for the duration of the school year. We know a lot about the impact that has on school climate and what happens in a space when there are caring adults present, even if it's not in that one-on-one level. And so the school-based program is available here. And then we have our more traditional community-based program. I think it's what folks are mostly familiar with. It's what they think of when they think of Big Brothers, Big Sisters. It's where bigs meet their littles in the community. So they're driving to pick up their little at their home. They're doing an activity that is free or very low cost. They're hanging out about once a week. Usually they're doing things like going to the library, going to the dog park, doing homework together, getting ice cream, whatever, is of interest to both of them, and just spending time together. That's what it's about. It's just being there for each other.
Yeah. That's, I think, often understated importance. We talk a little bit about aging folks and how important it is for them to have that connection to others. But It's not always something that's available to young people.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about how you find young people that are targets for this program that would be benefiting, and how do they get connected?
Yeah, it's a good question. I wish I had a different answer, to be completely honest. I'm going to preface with that. We work on a waiting list. So most of the families that are coming to our program have just heard of Big Brothers Big Sisters and want their child to have a mentor. So we have a waiting list. It has not been uncommon in the past for littles to wait up to 2 years to have a mentor. And so we've been working really hard to decrease that. But there's not a lot of recruitment we have to do for the young people in our program. Folks just kind of know about it. We do get referrals from school personnel, school counselors, teachers, mental health professionals, primary care providers, other community organizations. But for the most part, it's just people just know about it, and families want their kids involved in our program.
So when it comes to the impact, I think one of the best ways that I learn, and one of the best ways that other folks kind of tune in is through stories. Um, can you think of perhaps a story or a couple stories, or blend together some stories about what happens in the life of a child when they go through a mentorship experience? How long does that typically last, and how do you see that individual develop over time?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything we do is in stories, right? These are relationships and these are people. So it's really an honor to be able to tell their stories. So most of our littles are in middle school. That's we enroll kids as young as 6, but most of them are in middle school. I mean, think about what middle school was like for any one of us. It was, for me, it wasn't the greatest time. So I can understand that experience. There's kind of a cycle of relationship development. The first few months are just kind of getting to know you. There is innately some awkwardness and kind of figuring that out. It is a very structured relationship. And so we help people navigate that. Every match is supported by agency staff, so you're not walking it alone. Right around the 6 to 9 month mark, things get, there's kind of a shorthand that develops between bigs and littles. You start to see that they have fallen into their groove. And we ask for a 12-month commitment for our programs. Most of our matches go well beyond that. The average match length is sitting at around 29 months currently. So folks really are going beyond that 12-month requirement. One of the, I think, real life examples of how this manifests for a young person, that it's a story I love so much. There was she was a middle school student when she was in our program, and shortly around meeting her big, she was going through teenage things, and one of the things she was experiencing was her skin was changing, and she had some pretty significant, she just was insecure about what her skin looked like. And so in school, that was showing up as her having her hoodie on. She had her head down, she wasn't participating, she was just insecure. And so she had a conversation about that with her big. They figured out a skincare routine that worked. She hadn't had that conversation before, and that resolved, and she got to a better place and worked through all of that. And then I think the coming full circle piece for me here is that she, at this point, she was in high school and had like a business development class, and she created, it was like lip balm. And so she created a product. She had a business development plan that she worked on with her big. It was really targeting, young girls who are struggling with their confidence. It was a lived experience she had that she was able to build on. And all of those pieces were built on by time with her big. It was the little that did all of it, that really executed it all, but with the support of her big. So it shows up in a lot of different ways for matches, but that's just one that I'm really particularly fond of.
So it's about igniting that potential in an individual, it sounds like, in that case.
Absolutely.
Budding entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about the other side of it too, because with a waiting list, it means you need more bigs. You need a lot more bigs. How do people change as they go through this as a big? What happens? What's their story like?
So I think consistently what we hear is that bigs become just more aware of themselves and their experiences, but their community. So a lot of times we hear bigs say, I have learned to appreciate things that I may have had, or learned to appreciate people in my life. There are times where bigs just learn about a kind of part of our community they never really knew about. We have bigs, it's something as simple as we have bigs who are new to the area and say, I don't really have a network yet, I don't have friends yet, I just want to get to know the city, go to parks, and they get to build community and time with their little, because it's kind of something fun to do. But more so than that, they just get to learn about a different perspective on life. We get bigs who are saying it changed the way I thought about something because I got to see it from a different lens that I never would have otherwise. It's really empowering. A lot of times, pretty consistently, we have bigs to say, I think I'm getting more out of this than my little is. That happens in most matches at some point, and it's a fun conversation to have because we can say, no, here are the things we're hearing from your little. Here's how they've grown. But gosh, what an incredible experience that you're growing through this too.
So I imagine that the socioeconomic backgrounds are going to be very different, but other demographic differences, I imagine, in these matches as well. Talk back to your experience moving to Richmond. Yeah. How does that play out, and how do those things shape the relationship and individuals?
Yeah, that's something that we have done a lot of intentional work around and have a lot more to do. So we know that about 70%, 70 to 75% of our waiting list and children served are Black or brown kids. That is not the number of volunteers we have. That's not the proportion of volunteers that are Black or brown that are mentoring our kids. It actually is almost the entire opposite. It's about 30% of our bigs that are Black or brown. And so a lot of times we are making introductions between people who have very different experiences around their race and what that looks like in their life and in their community. So there's a lot of cultural humility that has to happen and understanding for both kind of groups or parties in a match. We used to have part of a process was that we would ask people if there were deal breakers for them. Like, is there a deal breaker to be matched with someone who's a different religion, a different race, a specific age group? And we don't so much think about it as deal breakers at this point. I think when we ask those questions, it's help me understand kind of pieces that you think would be spaces that you could really impact and you could really learn from. So we talk very openly with all of our participants about not only socioeconomic status, but race and religion and sexual orientation and gender identity, just different parts of again, kind of going back to their identity and what they choose to show up as and share. And we want to make sure that we're respecting where those people are coming from and also creating opportunities for there to be a lot of connectivity.
So, having not really had the experience myself, I'm curious. There must be, difficult conversations that come up in these relationships. How does that play out for folks? Is it really all handled by the match, or is there resources there for bigs to kind of understand how to talk about difficult things?
Yeah, it varies. So one of the really nice things about being in our organization is that we have a whole catalog of tools that are available to bigs and parents and littles that are around training. So let's say one of the things we have seen before is a big say, hey, my little has an incarcerated family member, and that's not an experience I'm familiar with. What are some things that I need to be thinking about when and if they choose to talk about it? You could go into this catalog and search for topics that are tied to that. But it's really on us as the agency walking along the match and figuring out what are the things that you're encountering? What are the things that we can equip you with? So we have partners in town. So like the Virginia Center for Inclusive Communities is a strong partner. Mm-hmm. They release a ton of material that is always accessible to our bigs, and we're always plugging into as resources for them. We want to make sure that bigs are also leaning in on other resources around them. And it's on us to make those connections. So we have had some interesting conversations come up, both kind of on a funny side and some a lot more serious, where bigs are saying, hey, my little told me this, or this came from conversation, I don't know what to do with it. And we help people process that. And then on the other side, we talk with a little about it. We say, hey, let's talk about this. What did this look like? Or is it safe to talk about this? It's mostly on us to kind of walk it with our matches.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the Virginia Center for Inclusive Communities. We actually had Jonathan Zer on our show a few episodes back. So excited to bring them on. Mm-hmm. So I want to talk again, before we kind of transition to broader community health, I want to talk a little bit about, I know you get some things coming up, but I want to go to your recent experience of becoming a parent. And I know that the mission for Big Brothers Big Sisters won't change, and I know that your plans likely won't change, but how do you see this new experience for you shaping your future as you lead this organization?
It's a good question. One of the things that I have found myself thinking about a lot is that I have to operate within kind of guardrails and think about values that are important to me that I help to pass on to my daughter. But at the end of the day, I need to do it in a way that gives her the space to figure out what those values are going to be for herself as she grows up. In a really supportive way. And so that feels like a really tall order. And I don't need to figure that out right now. She's 6 months. We're not talking about teenage years yet. But it's something I think about. And so when you're thinking about our work and our organization, I think it operates the same way. What are the things we value and we commit to live by and then operate within? How do we pass those values along while creating the space for our young people to help drive the work forward too? We do this in partnership with families and with young people, not for them. And so how are we opening up the space, opening the door, the table, what have you, so that young people are helping to drive our future too. So it's an interesting place to be.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk a little bit about something you've got coming up, but first, thank you for listening to America's Healthiest City on Mike King Biz Radio Network. Thanks for joining us today, folks. We have Ellie Martinez, the executive director from Big Brothers Big Sisters, in the studio with us here at ESPN. We are talking about mentoring young people and how that impacts Richmond. I want to talk a little bit about an event you guys have coming up, and then I want to talk a little bit more about how we can get more bigs involved. So tell us. I'm going to mess it up, so I'm going to let you talk about. Big Night Out, is that right?
Okay. Absolutely. Yeah, you're spot on. So Big Night Out, it is our fundraising gala. One of the things I always want to make sure folks understand is we are entirely donor supported. None of this happens without donor support. So none of our participants, big, littles, families, volunteers, pay a penny into our program. And so we have to do the lift as a community, right? To make sure the funds are there. So we have a gala fundraiser on November 17th. It is our Big Night Out in Wonderland, so it is Alice in Wonderland themed. I'm very excited about it. I've been looking at dresses for a while now. It is going to be at the John Marshall Ballroom in the evening of the 17th, which is a Friday night. It's going to be really fun. So we have a silent auction, a live auction. We are going to be graced by the presence of the Jangling Reinhardts, who are going to be putting on musical performance for us. It will be a really good time and just an opportunity to be around other people who really believe in our work and want to support it and understand its impact in future generations to come, and are just willing to be a part of the mission with us. So so Big Night Out on November 17th at the John Marshall Ballroom. Information is all over our website, social media, but it's bigbrobigsist.com. It's all up there.
Awesome. Well, I know that Richmond Water is excited to fill a table of VIPs at that event. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you for being there. We're excited.
Yeah, well, I'm not the costume person, so I will need to lean on my wife's creativity to help me with that. But
I'm sure she will.
Yeah, we'll figure something. So one of the things that we ask everybody who comes onto this show is, what do we need to do to make a difference? Obviously, there are big things that people are working on. There are small things that people are working on, and it takes kind of everybody doing something and putting their energy in. I give everybody the opportunity to just share an idea or more than one that we can put on our ideas board.
Yeah, absolutely. I think more so than anything, what we're seeing now is kind of the youth mental health crisis that we are experiencing, and I think that is twofold. One, it's young people having been in isolation for several years. And then two is the shortage of mental health providers. That's really kind of showing up in some really tough ways for people. I don't know if you know this, but on average, it takes 10 years from the first time a person experiences a mental health symptom to when they seek help. And a lot happens in that 10 years. And so going back to the preventive nature of what I think is my calling, it's to connect with people. I don't think we're going to immediately solve the need of supply of mental health providers, but I think a lot can go really far in just being connected with people. So find people that you used to have relationships, find new relationships. And especially if you can invest in a young person, we can do a lot to kind of combat the impact of any trauma they've experienced, especially tied to the recent isolation that they've had. So just make an effort to connect with people and check in on people, and also do some self-care. So be mindful of what mental health might look like for yourself, and get some support. It's important.
Yeah. Well, I think we've all suffered from some amount of isolation recently, and we all need to kind of nudge ourselves back in. So let's talk about the grown-ups a little bit. So we can connect. We can connect with the young people. Um, how does one sign up to be a big, and what's that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that question because we need so many bigs. So it's a super easy process. You go on our website, you submit a quick inquiry form, say I want to be a big. We'll follow up with you. I have to always lead with this, but it's a lengthy process. So it is easy, but we will walk through it with you. But it is lengthy, and we have to make sure that this is the right program for each volunteer at that time. So you'll fill out an application, you go through kind of an orientation video that is self-paced, you watch it on your own. And then we go through an interview process where we really get to know you. This is a really fun part for me. We have volunteers who walk out saying, gosh, I shared more with you than I have with lots of other people. But we get to talk about you, who you are. So it's really fun. And then we give you some training. We're not just going to put you into a match without some resources available at your disposal first. So all of our volunteers go through some required training before they're matched, and ongoing support too.
So another question that I want to make sure that I get in, and this is something that we ask of all of our guests, who should we be interviewing? There's a lot of folks out there making a difference, and we want to get them in the studio. So what's an idea of somebody that we might bring onto the show?
Yeah, I am almost a little embarrassed to admit this, but this is a person I've had minimal interaction with, but someone I really admire and have kind of been following. Aurora Higgs is a speaker, educator, an activist, just an incredible force to be reckoned with around all things for LGBTQ rights and inclusion. If you're not familiar with her work, look it up. She has done some really incredible work. She's incredibly intelligent and is really doing work around making sure LGBTQ communities are secure and provided for and advocated for. She's helped pass legislation around LGBTQ rights and is just such an advocate and an ally, and uses her own story as a Black, queer, trans femme in the South to really live out this kind of empowering message for other people. So yeah, we've had brief interactions, but I adore what she does, and it's so powerful.
Well, thank you for that recommendation. It'll be new territories for this show, but definitely something we want to do. So thank you.
Yeah.
So bigbroBigSis.org?
.com.
Yep. Okay, bigbroBigSis.com. You guys have Big Night Out on November 17th.
Yep.
How can folks find you online?
So go to bigbroBigSis.com. All of our information is there. We're also across all the social media channels. So at Be a Big VA across all the platforms, we are there. And our contact information is pretty present on all those pages.
Well, I thank you so much for coming on to the show with me. This is really such an important topic. Our young people are our future. I do believe that. I don't have my own kids, but definitely want to invest in those who are out there. So thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
This was America's Healthiest City on ESPN Richmond 106.1. Join us every Thursday at 6 a.m. Here on Mike King Biz Media Network. We are so excited to bring you this show, and americashealthiestcity.com is where you go to find all the information.